Hello, this is Ben Runo, and this is going to be my review of the HTC Droid DNA for Verizon Wireless. One of the first things that caught me about this display was the design. The phone is incredibly slim and has great build quality, as well as good cameras on both the front and the back of this device. For comparison, I put the phone next to a Nintendo 3DS to show how slim the device is. HTC used a stacked design so they could take full advantage of the curved back, while still making this phone feel really good in the hand. And it really does fit well. I think they could have even made the phone a little bit thicker and it still would have been very comfortable to hold. I also love that HTC used a soft touch rubber finish on the back, which helps the phone stay secure in your hands. HTC also built an odd feature into this device, which is the rear-facing notification LED. I can definitely see the usefulness of this addition, and luckily it doesn't get annoying, but I definitely would have preferred a way to jump straight into most recent notifications, like with the Moto X's active display. With that, let's move on to the display. The display measures 5 inches with a resolution of 1920 by 1080p and Super LCD 3 technology. Now, I have to say, the overall quality of the display is very good, and it's just about the best viewing angles I've ever seen on a smartphone, beating out many other phones I've used, if only by a slight margin. To show the quality of the display, I've loaded a trailer for a beautiful movie called The Secret of Kells, which, if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend that you do. As you can see from the trailer, the movie looks incredible, and there just aren't enough ways to say how beautiful this display is. The colors are beautiful and pop nicely, while not being oversaturated, and no matter what you're doing with the display, everything looks sharp and has an incredible amount of detail. One notable admission here, though, is boom sound, which normally has the speakers placed on the top and the bottom of the phone, whereas here, we only have one lone speaker on the back of the device, which while it does put out a lot of sound, when it does, the whole back of the phone starts to rumble. So you probably won't want to max out the speakers. Even so, the sound quality is good, and there isn't much to complain about here versus other phones that aren't HTC's newest flagships. And then there's the software. This phone is running Android, and that means you can customize the launcher to your liking. What I've done is load a copy of KitKat Launcher, which allows Google Now left of my home screen, as well as lots of useful shortcuts buried in a swipe from the left. And when you make your way to unlocking the device, there are useful shortcuts in Sense that allow you to jump into 4 pre-selected apps, like the ones I have selected here. While this is useful, I found myself missing a lot of the lock screen gestures, such as double tap to wake, which I've become accustomed to. And with many devices now adopting new and useful ways of unlocking your phone, the Droid DNA falls behind the pack by only offering the traditional experience. And that is disappointing, because after using devices like the Moto X, I think that every display needs some of these features. They are incredibly useful and make the whole experience a lot quicker. Next, let's talk about the camera. It's an 8 megapixel sensor, and while that sounds like a lower number today, I was pleasantly surprised by the performance. I spent a lot of time outside taking pictures for this review, and many of them truly impressed me. This phone lacks optical image stabilization, which can be a problem at times when you're trying to take a good shot quickly, but usually a little bit of patience and a steady hand will solve the problem. One thing I did find myself missing on this phone as well was the hardware shutter button. I've gotten used to the hardware shutter button on my current daily driver, and I am convinced that's something every phone should have. Besides that, I found myself trying to hold the phone still and set a focus point abnormally difficult. While this phone isn't heavy, it's awkwardly long, which makes it hard to keep the phone steady when setting your focus point, which can be a little unnerving. There are some problems that you have with all large screen Android phones, though. I found myself just letting the phone's autofocus take care of it in a lot of situations. Sometimes it worked well, sometimes it produced a very blurry photo. But I hope to see more manufacturers include shutter buttons and OIS in the future, As for the picture quality, I found pictures to be very sharp and the colors came through very strong. And the pictures almost seem to be given new life when looked at on this display and shots that are taken with this camera. Not a lot of times with new smartphones can I say that the colors really impressed me, but they did here. They were very accurate, and I just love the overall shooting experience with this camera. It's definitely something that not many people will have room to complain about. Also of note here is the front-facing camera, which is a 2.1 megapixel sensor and has a very wide field of view. I think this is one of the best front cameras I've used in a phone. While not high praise, it's still a nice addition. And lastly, let's move on to that battery. The battery life is something of a concern for many people when it comes to this phone, but I definitely didn't find it to be a deal breaker, and found it to hold up quite well for average, everyday use. Bottom line is, the Droid DNA is a well-made, well-designed smartphone with an incredible display. The negatives are the admission of lock screen gestures and the awkward photo-taking experience. Overall, I give this one a 7.8 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.